Hello and welcome to Let the Bird Fly, a podcast about living freely in a world given back to us. This is Wade here in the podcast studio, flying solo for another session of faith, fitness, fellowship, and formation. My dear friend and colleague here at the college, Sarah, is a big fan of when I review all the sessions so far at the beginning of a new one. But I suppose we'll go ahead and forego that today as they are starting to pile up. So, what are we going to talk about today in this session of Faith, Fitness, Fellowship, and Formation? Well, let me begin by telling you a story from yesterday. My neighbors across the street, I'm sure they are wonderful people. They are certainly interesting people and interesting in some pretty interesting ways. And yet, I try to kind of let them do their thing as long as it's not impacting any of the other neighbors. But one of the interesting things they like to do is to set their garbage bin out on our day on our lawn. They have a day for their garbage, and they have a side of the street that they can place their bin right at. And yet, for quite a while, that was their habit, was to set it out on our day and on our side, and that was fine, and didn't say anything for the longest time until we started getting some warnings about pretty interesting things that were in the can. And understandably, for the workers, they're collecting garbage. They don't know which can goes to which house, and so to them, it's just attached to our address that there's these unacceptable things in the cans. And so we've gotten some warnings, and I don't want to lose garbage service or be paying some sort of fine. And so I've done what you do, and you go and you talk to your neighbor, and I've explained, well, we've had these warnings, and this is going to impact us. Appreciate if you could just put your bin out on your side on your day, and not on our side, especially when there's weird things in there, like one day a whole bin just full of of dirt. Well, they had started doing it again, and I thought, you know what, it's not worth dealing with right now. But the last couple weeks, it's been a little extra interesting over there, and I knew from this last week or two there was some stuff that could end up in the bin again that would get us a warning or in trouble. And so when I saw the bin out there yesterday for garbage day, I just moved it back over to their side of the street where it could sit for their collection. And we got their doorbell rung late at night last night. The Tigers were going into extra innings, and he was very upset. He started by, trying to be friendly for about 2 seconds, but then he was yelling and cussing and what are we supposed to do? Um, we missed our garbage day. How are we supposed to get our garbage picked up now? And I'm not looking to fight someone. I'm too old for that. And I mean, I suppose it could be fun in the moment, but I'm not looking to fight. And I simply explained, well, we've talked about this before, and here's the issue, and this is how it's impacted us, and we've talked about it, and you have chosen not to respect it the last few weeks, and so I moved your bin back where it belongs on your side of the road. And he just could not wrap his head around how this wasn't my problem, that his garbage didn't get picked up because he forgot his day for garbage pickup, and who knows what was in this bin. Um, he eventually, right, I made clear, look, we're not talking about this anymore. We've talked about this before, made it pretty plain. He was a little strung out from anger or whatever else. I was trying to communicate as plainly as possible. It's not acceptable to come up on my porch and be screaming at me about something that your lack of preparation brought about. And he was making his way back. Uh, but I felt at least a little bit of sympathy because I can tell that for him, he thought this was some crisis, some emergency, that his garbage had not been picked up. But the thing was, it was a totally avoidable crisis. It wasn't an emergency at all. In fact, he even could have called the city for pickup or taken whatever he needed to take to the dump, or just waited the couple days or whatever it is to have his garbage picked up. This was entirely created through a lack of awareness and preparation and scheduling, and through a dismissal of previous discussions. And yet this thing had become huge. I'm liking to think he slept on it, and he'll feel a little silly when he's calmed down about how he handled it. Um, but the fact of the matter is, right, this wasn't my emergency. And it wasn't going to become my emergency by getting more warnings or losing service. All of us, like him at times, find ourselves in crisis mode or with supposed emergencies that didn't need to be that. And I can here speak a mea culpa with uh, this man across the street and all of you who have ever found yourself there. We can put things off, or we can be in so many different places when we try to do things that it comes to crisis mode, that it feels like an emergency. And then the stress piles up, and we live in perpetual fight or flight mode, right? Our cortisol, I think that is, hopefully I'm getting that right. Our cortisol is going, but that's meant for real emergencies, right? There's a bear chasing me, or we're out and we have to get the hunt done. That's not meant to be how you exist most of the hours of most of your days. And it impacts your sleep, and it impacts your diet, and it impacts your exercise, and it impacts your relationships, and it impacts your choices, and it impacts how well you do at your vocations, how present you're able to be for your neighbor, but also the skill that you're able to bring to your craft. Stress was a big deal and something I had to deal with a lot as I was trying to undertake this journey to improve my health. Too many things were becoming too big for me, and I needed to learn to say, this is a thing that has to be done now. That's a thing that can be done tomorrow. Uh, this is an emergency for you that you've created for you that is not my emergency, right? I'm not talking about someone's in the hospital or sick, but the student who chose not to work on their assignment until an hour before it's due. Well, that student then leads to learn from that situation, and this can happen in your workplace or whatever area of life. Someone else's procrastination need not be my emergency. Someone wants to drive crazy on the road, I can let that eat at me and get very angry, which I'm good at doing. Or I can say, you know what, they want to drive crazy. That doesn't mean I have to drive crazy, and I'm going to go ahead and say a prayer that they don't hurt anyone else. If you look at your past week or your past month, what have been the things that have seemed like crises and emergencies that didn't need to be? And how can you address them in the future by scheduling and prioritizing things and perspective? What are the things that you can say, you know what, that doesn't have to be a right now thing. How about we do that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at this time, and we might even do it better if we think about it? What are the things that you can say, I set aside this time for that thing, but I was actually doing a bunch of different things there and didn't really get to focus, so that now I'm behind on that. What can we do to actually make use of that time, whether it be putting our phone away or saying, you know what, this is time for course prep or for text study, and I would really love to, you know, look deeper into this topic that kind of comes from that, but isn't what I'll bring into the classroom or the pulpit. Well, how do I dial in at that point on the actual task at hand? How do I be sitting and listening to the person who needs to talk to me in that moment rather than having my mind everywhere else? What are the things I've maybe taken on that I don't need to be doing? Am I assessing what actually needs to be done? Does it need to be done just because it's always been done before? What meetings need to be meetings or could be emails? You'd be surprised sometimes. Lots of people are just waiting for someone to point out that that didn't need to be a meeting, or at least not that long. What are you doing to prioritize your health and your ability to serve your neighbor by not living in constant crisis mode and letting only real emergencies be emergencies? And real emergencies are the ones you can't control, right? They just come to you through your neighbor, or through something that's happened out of your control in your life. The things you can control might end up becoming like emergencies, but they didn't need to be. And I don't say that to guilt you. I say that to say, you and both of us, what can we do better next time to avoid that happening? And as you see the stress begin to, at least to some degree, decline in your life, right? I can't control other people. Yeah, I didn't feel great about someone being on my porch yelling at me, and I made clear that wasn't acceptable behavior. And I probably did dwell on it longer than I should have. I had done exactly what we had talked about being the situation, that didn't belong there. And so I put it where it belonged, and it was explained why that was the case. Why would I let that anger take hold of me? And yet we can dwell on those things. We can let someone else's thoughts, anger, procrastination, etc., get at us in ways that we actually could control if we just let ourselves go for a walk, take a nap, whatever. Um, throw yourself into something that you know you can get lost in for a bit. So, what needs to be an emergency in your life and what doesn't? What times do you actually need to be in crisis mode, and where can you avoid it? I encourage you to think on that and see how you're able to arrange time in your life to help minimize the stress that comes through situations that get bigger than they need to be. I am still working on it. If you figure out some great ways, shoot me a message and let me know as well. But hopefully, then, too, in the midst of even real emergencies, we can then um, be prepared better to act in those moments and to act with hope and joy and faith and gospel freedom, rested and focused on the moment and able to let the bird fly. I can't not tell this part, but my favorite part was after I'd explained the thing about like 4 different ways of what was going on, and he's kind of cussing and threatening whatever on his way, which I explained this is all on the camera on the door, but he couldn't help himself. And but as he's making his way home and he gets across the street to his wife or girlfriend, who I'm sure told him how great it was that he was so manly. He turned towards me, and he must know I'm a pastor because he sees me in the clericals, and he yells out, "I bet you're a Lutheran." And I just had to laugh because, well, everybody blames the Lutherans.